This way we try to shape a sane and sound idea of our future sex life. By looking at the past, we have some plans for the future. And he said we subject each relationship to the test, whether it's selfish or not.
The book doesn't care how you do sex. If you want to do sex hanging upside down from a tree limb by your toenails, that's fine with the book. But if you're forcing another human being to have sex with you hanging upside down from a tree limb by their toenails when they don't want to, chances are that's for selfish reasons only. That's the key question. Is it just selfish or not?
We ask God to mold our ideas and help us live up to them. Remember always that our sex powers are God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly, to selfish, despised, or loathed. Whatever our ideas turn out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided we do not bring about still more harm in doing so. And we see there already a little indication of step 9, when to do so would injure them or others. We need to put this down and look at it and analyze it, the past, even though maybe we won't be able to make amends to it about it. In other words, we treat sex as with any other problem. In meditation, we ask God what we should do in each specific matter. The right answer will come if we want it. God alone can judge our sex situation. Counsel with other persons is often desirable. I think the book is very specific here, but we let God be the final judge. We realize that some people are fanatical about sex and others are loose. We avoid hysteria, thinking, or advice. And we have a friend of ours that says all the time, and it's really true, is one thing around AA, it says we share our experience, strength, and hope. And I think a lot of us have added advice. You know, you can get a lot of advice around AA, too. And if you want to do something bad enough, and you talk to enough AA people, you'll finally find somebody to agree with you. But the book is very specific here when it comes to our sex lives. It says we let God be the final judge. And I don't think that is anything new. I found out, it really wasn't new in my life. I have never been in a sexual situation in my life that was wrong, that I didn't know it was wrong. It seems like I've always had that. It says, let's listen to that. You can hear all kind of talk around AA about sex. People say, well, you shouldn't have any relationship for a year. The book doesn't say that, Well, he bring in all kind of things. A young lady asked me that one time, and she said, do you believe in staying out of relationships for a year? And she said, that's what my sponsor said. I said, well, I don't have to do with your sponsor, but tell her if she did it, you'd do it. But we do get a lot of advice, and the book doesn't say that. It tells us to ask God, let God be the final judge. And it says we might make some mistakes with this. We're not perfect. It says suppose we fall short of the chosen idea and stumble. Does this mean we're going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but this is only half true. It depends upon our motives. If we are sorry for what we have done and have an honest desire to let God take us to better things, we believe we'll be forgiven and have learned our lesson. We might make some mistakes, but it's in our attitude. If we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to drink. We're not theorizing. These are facts of our experience. And I think it's the key thing. Anything in life, if it is going to hurt another person, it's wrong for us. To some about sex, we earnestly pray for the right idea, for guidance. Again, prayer. Prayer is throughout here. Another prayer. We pray for guidance in these questionable situations and for strength to do the right thing. If sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves hard into helping others. We think of their needs and work for them. This takes us out of ourselves and it quiets the imperious urge when the yield would mean heartache. And now he gives us an ultimate weapon for sex. Work with another alcoholic. It seems like that's the only way that we can get out of self. when we get involved with another alcoholic, we get so involved in his life that their lives, that it takes us out of self, and God can work in our lives. This is the ultimate weapon. When anything else fails, work with another alcoholic. Now now that we have completed sex, we have quite naturally the same information on that sheet. In the fourth column, we have the things that we're going to talk to another human being about. We're going to have the things we're willing to let go of, the character defects involved with the sex conduct of the past, and the things we're going to ask God to remove, listed in the fourth column. We also have some people on this list that we have harmed. And they go on the step 8 and 9 lists, and we might not be able to make amends to them, but we sure have them on the list. So we did everything we need for sex throughout the rest of the program. And now we're going to summarize what we have done in the inventory. If we have been through our personal inventory, we have written down a lot. We have listed and analyzed our resentments. It doesn't say it here, and I don't like to add nothing to the book, but we have also listed and analyzed our fears. We have also listed and analyzed the sex conduct of the past. We have begun to comprehend their futility and their fatality. We have commenced to see their terrible destruction. We have begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men, even our enemies, for we look at them as sick people. Now, we look through the book. The first step, we just saw the problem, and we really didn't do anything. There was really no great progress in the first step, except we solved the problem. The second step, we saw the solution. The third step, we just made a decision. We didn't do anything much. We just made a decision. So we didn't get any personality change out of the first 3 steps. Here's the first personality change taking place after the fourth step. We learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men, even our enemies, for we look at them as sick people. We put some action into the fourth step, so we get something out of it. And we're going to see the personality change take place now from here on out, 4, 5, 6. But gradually we're going to see things begin to happen as a result of these action steps. Step 4 is a real action step, and we get something from it. So we have listed people we have hurt by our conduct and are willing to straighten out the past if we can. We have made the list for step 8 and 9. And also right here, usually we suggest, I do, with people I work with, if you got anybody else you have harmed, and if for any other reason, it might not be a sexual, you can just put it at the bottom of that sheet. If you're working with somebody, put down, what you did to them. And also analyze it out. Which part of self caused you to do it, and which character defect? Step 8 will be it's so easier when you realize that what within you caused you to do it, and you saw the role you played in this harm. And when you see which character defect within you caused this harm, it makes you more willing to make amends to it. A good step 4 makes step 8 a lot easier when we can see what we did to cause this harm to another individual. It's easier for us to go to them and make an amend. It's hard to make an amend when you don't see what caused you to do it. It's kind of a false. When you really see in your gut which part of you and how you were involved in it, it makes you more willing to make amends. In this book you read again and again that faith did us what we could not do for ourselves. We hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from Him. If you have already made a decision, step 3, and an inventory of your grosser handicaps, step 4, you have made a good beginning. That being so, you have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. And again, I love the term grosser handicaps. Our grosser handicaps are a wrong judgment, resentments, wrong believing, fear, and the guilt and remorse of the harms we have caused other people in the past. These are the 3 grosser things that block us from God. So we have removed our grosser handicaps, and that's what step 4 is all about. Most people, You know, they want to wait around until they get perfect to work the steps. But all we want to do is start with our grosser handicaps. And we're going to have another step later on that is going to go farther.
You know, if I can get rid of these gross handicaps, and that's probably going to allow me then to have enough peace of mind to be able to stay sober long enough to work the rest of the program. But if I don't do something about some of these things, and they keep blocking me off from God's will, sooner or later they cause me to drink. And as I look back in my life today, I don't think I've ever had an emotional problem that did not involve itself in one of these three ways anyhow. Every problem I can remember from the past is I was madder than hell at somebody, I was scared to death about something, or I had done something to hurt another human being. I don't think I've ever had an emotional problem that did not revolve around one of those three things. And as I look forward into the future, I don't think I'll ever have a problem in the future that will not involve one of those three things. I'll be mad at somebody, or I'll be scared to death about something, or I will have hurt another human being. For me, I think this inventory is complete, because everything I've ever done has revolved around those three things anyhow. And if we can get that out of our head, we can have some peace of mind, some serenity, some happiness, and then we can continue with the rest of the program. You see, step 4 is not negative at all. Step 4 is a positive step. It's a cleansing step. It removes these things from us. It's not difficult to do according to the book, nor is it necessarily anything to be afraid of. It's not just a list of dirty, filthy, nasty things. It's honestly, truthfully, morally looking at ourselves to see where our conduct of the past has really hurt other people and created problems in for us. I don't know whether you all have noticed or not, but as we finish up on step 4, have you ever noticed that nearly all the information in the book on sex is on page 69? I don't know that that means anything at all, but almost all of it is on that particular page. Joe and I heard a story not long ago, again, about a young lady who had been sober in AA for 60 or 90 days, and she went to see her sponsor, and she said, "Sponsor, I'm having all kinds of trouble with sex." And her sponsor said, "Oh, what seems to be the trouble?" She said, "Well, sober, I don't know anything about it at all." She said, "The only time I've ever dealt with sex, the only time I've ever tried to attract a member of the opposite sex is whenever I've been drinking." And she said, "Sober, I just don't know what to do, how to function, or anything at all." And the sponsor said, "Well, I suggest you go home, get out your big book, and read page 69. And she said, "There you will find the answers to any sexual problems you might have, drunk or sober." So the young lady said, "Great." She went home, got out her big book, proceeded to read, but she got confused on the page numbers. Instead of page 69, she read page 96. Just for the hell of it, let's go see what she read on page 96. You see, there is some humor in the big book if you look for it. It's there. Okay, let's go to page 72. I know everybody has been concerned, would we be able to complete the steps today? And the answer is yes. You see, we've done most of the work now. We can see as we filled out our inventory, we've already laid out everything we need for steps 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So now we're going to take that information, we're going to apply it to these next few steps, and we're going to see that it really isn't too difficult at all. On page 72, it says, "Having made our personal inventory, what shall we do about it?" We've been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator, and to discover the obstacles in our path. We have admitted certain defects. We have ascertained in a rough way what the trouble is. We've put our finger on the weak items in our personal inventory. Now these are about to be cast out. This requires action on our part, which when completed will mean that we have admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our defects. This brings us to the fifth step in the program of recovery mentioned in the preceding chapter. Now we must stop here and point out that step 5 says we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. But here you'll notice in the narrative he did not say wrongs, he said the exact nature of our defects. And we're going to find that Bill, every time in this narrative, when he refers to these steps 5, 6, and 7, that he jumbles these words up. He doesn't pay a bit of attention where he uses them. He used wrongs in the step, but he uses defects in the narrative. In step 7, he uses shortcomings. But in the narrative for step 6, we'll see after a while, where he talked about, instead of defects, he talked about things that are objectionable. And then the narrative on 7, instead of talking about shortcomings, he talks about defects. And he just jumbled them up and used them any way he wanted. And people used to ask Bill about that, and again he would say, when I took those English and writing courses in college, they taught me to use the same words over and over. Shows how ignorant you really are. He said, doesn't make any difference what you call them, they're all the same. He said, in 4, we find out those things that block us off from God's will. In 5, we're going to talk about them to another human being. In 6, we're going to become ready to turn them loose. And in 7, we're going to ask God to take them away. And he said, you can call them anything you want. A mistake, a fault, a defect, a shortcoming, or whatever. And we'll watch him do that as we go through these next 3 steps. Here was the first place he did that. It says this is perhaps difficult, especially discussing our defects, not wrongs, our defects with another person. We think we've done well enough in admitting these things to ourselves. There is doubt about that. In actual practice, we usually find a solitary self-appraisal insufficient. Many of us thought it necessary to go much further. We will be more reconciled to discussing ourselves with another person when we see good reasons why we should do so. The best reason first, if we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking. Well, that's about as good a reason as I can think of. But now he tells us why that's true. He said, time after time, newcomers have tried to keep to themselves certain facts about their lives. Trying to avoid this humbling experience, they've turned to easier methods. Almost invariably, they got drunk. Having persevered with the rest of the program, they wondered why they failed. Well, we think the reason is that they never completed their house cleaning. They took inventory all right, but hung on to some of the worst items in stock. They only thought they had lost their egoism and fear. They only thought they had humbled themselves, but they had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary until they told someone else all their life story. Now that statement is the statement that caused us to write our life stories in step 4, before we learned how to do the inventory the way the book says. You know, really, we've shared all our life story in these grosser handicap areas, those things that really count. If I list the resentments in my head today, they didn't come in there just today. Some of them were put in there last week, last year, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And if I honestly list my resentments that's in my head today, I have shared all my life story resentment-wise. If I list all my fears, they didn't come just today either. Those fears have been embedded in my head from time to time throughout my entire lifetime. And if I've shared those fears, I've shared all my life story fear-wise. Those harms I've done to other people, I didn't do it just today. I've been hurting people all my life. My mother said, Charlie, you were a difficult child for me to love also. She said, you've been hurting people as far back as I can remember. And I've shared all my life story harm-wise to other people in the three gross areas of things that really caused me to drink. I just don't think the fact I was born in 1929 has anything to do with my alcoholism. But the things that really caused me to drink, I've shared them with another human being. In the middle of page 73, he said, more than most people, the alcoholic leads a double life. He's very much the actor. To the outer world, he presents a stage character. This is the one he likes his fellows to see. He wants to enjoy a certain reputation, but knows in his heart he doesn't deserve it. The inconsistency is made worse by the things he does on his sprees. Coming to his senses, he's revolted at certain episodes he vaguely remembers. These memories are a nightmare. He trembles to think someone might have observed him. As fast as he can, he pushes these memories far inside himself. He hopes they will never see the light of day. He is under constant fear and tension, and that makes for more drinking. Psychologists are inclined to agree with us. We spent thousands of dollars for examinations. We know but few instances where we've given these doctors a fair break. We have seldom told them the whole truth, nor have we followed their advice. Unwilling to be honest with these sympathetic men, we were honest with no one else. You know, it really doesn't make any sense, but we alcoholics will go to a psychiatrist, pay them $75, $100 an hour, lay down on the couch, and lie to them all the time we're laying there. Let's face it, we have become the world's greatest con artist. You have to be if you're a practicing alcoholic. You got to learn how to lie, con, manipulate other people. You've got to know how to fool other people. And above all, you have to be able to con yourself. You know, some of those things that we do while drinking, I don't believe we could face those things honestly and live with them. So what we do is we suppress those things deep inside ourselves, cover them up where we don't have to look at them. We've already seen what we do with resentments. Through resentments, we transfer blame to other people, clear ourselves of that, and then we're able to go on with our life the way we want to live it. And we've been conning people and ourselves forever. We are the world's greatest actors. Now, why would I believe that suddenly in step 4 that I'm going to be 100% honest with me? I did the dead level best I could in step 4, but I lie to me so much that it's impossible for me to take step 4. I think one of the reasons for step 5 is for me to take my step 4 to another human being who knows what I'm trying to do, who's walked the walk before, who can help me find these character defects that I need to work on. They can look at it from an outside point of view. They are not involved in it personally, and they can see it honestly where I can't. And I was amazed by this. Some of those things where I said this was caused by fear, he said, oh no, Charlie, this is plain dishonesty. That's all there is to it. And some of them I said, this is caused by sex, and he said, oh no, no, no. Here you're trying to build your self-esteem. He helped me find the things that I needed to change. Sure, we know that confession is good for the soul. We know that you get relief from sharing with another human being. But I also need to find out everything I can find out about me during this step 4 and 5 process. This is another reason I need to share with another human being. I can't even be honest with me today. I'm the world's greatest con artist right now. You know, you can be sitting there with a $100 bill sticking out of your shirt pocket. I can walk by you and pick up that $100 bill, and by the time I get to the back door, I have already justified why I needed to do that. And by the time I'm through the back door, I will have figured out how I've already done you a favor stealing your $100. Now, we are good at that. I think that's one of the reasons we need step 5, so we can see truthfully, honestly, morally, what we really are and the things we need to change. Joe?
As Charlie said, step 5 deals with the exact nature. And exact, you know, he has some words there. Exact in nature means, specific in this case, the inherent characteristic of the resentment or the fear. Where did it originate? It really originated in that 4th column. Those are the things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the selfishness, the dishonesty. Those are the characters that actually were the origination of the resentment. And those are the things we're going to discuss and try to, with another human being, and try to identify in a better way than we did in the inventory. Page 74 has to deal with how to select someone to do this with. And we all have sponsors today, but in the earlier days, this book was complete. And in those days, they didn't have any sponsors. They had to, when the book first came out, it hasn't been changed. It told those people how they might find someone to do this with. Now, over on page 75, it says, when we have decided who is to hear our story, we waste no time. We have a written inventory, and we are prepared for a long talk. We explain to our partner what we are about to do and why we have to do it. He should realize that we are engaged upon a life or death errand. Most people approaching this way will be glad to help. They'll be honored by our confidence. We pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. And he says, once we have taken this step withholding nothing, we are delighted. We can look the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Our fears fall from us, and we begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. The feeling to drain power and disappear will often come strongly. We'll feel we're on a broad highway walking hand in hand with the Spirit of the universe. Now, if we look at the results of this step, we can see that results of step 5 is greater than any step we've taken to this point. It says we begin with certain spiritual beliefs. In step 2, we came to believe. But at the end of step 5, the spiritual experience begins at the end of step 5. Not when we take step 3, but at the end of step 5. And this is the greatest results we've gotten throughout the program because we put a lot more into step 5. We had to go out and had to do something. We put more action into it, so we get more out of it. So we see even more personality change taking place as a result of step 5.
Program.
As a result of step 5. When we finish that, he says, returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour. And he gives us a little rest. It's the only place where he tells you can have a little rest. After step 5, you need a little rest.
But he didn't say 38 days. He said 1 hour.
Okay. Careful reviewing what we have done. We thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know him better. Taking this book down from our shelves, we turn to the page which contains the 12 steps, carefully reading the first 5 proposals. We ask if we have missed anything, for we are building an arch to which we shall walk a free man that lies. Is our work solid so far? Are the stones properly in place? Have we skimped on the cement putting the foundation? Have we tried to make mortar without sand? And again, he's going back to the little picture that he started painting way back in the first step. Remember when he said that the wilderness was the foundation? And then in step 2, he said believing was the cornerstone. And in step 3, he said step 3 was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. And now in step 4 and 5, we have added 2 more stones into it. He said examine those. And he's talking about the personality change that is taking place, which we've already seen the results of that. And those 2 things that is a little picture of what we're working on. And some results, we have results all through the steps. We don't have to wait until the last step or wait until after step. We're going to get results after each step. And he said if we can answer yes to our satisfaction, then we can look at step 6.
Over on page 76, if we can answer to our satisfaction, we then look at step 6. We have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable? Can he now take them all, every one? If we still cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. Now that's all on step 6. One short paragraph. And if you'll notice in that paragraph, he did not mention defects of character. The step does, but the narrative doesn't. Here he said, those things which we have admitted are objectionable. Surely we can see now in that fourth column, that old selfish character sitting out there. We can see that old dishonest character out there. We can see that self-seeking, frightened character out there. We can see that inconsiderate person. And surely through step 4 and 5, we've been able to see that type of personality is what's created our problems for us. That's what's kept us doing things that hurt other people and cause those people to retaliate. Those are the things that make us restless, irritable, and discontented. Those are the things that keep us from forgiving other people that's done things to us even though we had no part in it. If we could change that character out there, then we might find some peace of mind and happiness. Surely by now those things are objectionable to us. But the book recognizes that self cannot overcome self. And it recognizes we still may not be willing to turn loose of those things. And if we aren't willing, we ask for the willingness till it comes. Sometimes the only way we can be willing to do these things is to ask God for the willingness to be willing to do them. This is going to bring change if we turn loose of these things. And we human beings are scared to death of change because we don't know what change is going to bring. And sometimes we would rather sit there in the pain than take a chance on changing into something we don't know what it's going to be. You see, if you've been selfish all your life, you don't know what unselfishness will bring. If you've been dishonest all your life, well, how in the hell are you going to make a living honest? If you've operated on fear all your life, well, you don't know what courage what that will cause. If you've never considered other people, then you don't know anything about a life where you consider other people, and sometimes it's easier just to sit there and do nothing. And let's face it, some of the character defects are fun. Some of that stuff's exciting. And life may not be any fun if you don't continue doing the same stuff. So sometimes it's difficult to get rid of that stuff. But with God's help, we can become willing to change. I don't think we would ever become willing if it was not for step 4 and 5. That shows us what that stuff does to us and why we need to get rid of it. Now the book says when ready we say something like this. My Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. We've then completed step 7. Well, now step 7 said shortcomings, but here in the narrative he said defects of character. You see what he's done with them? He's just used them interchangeably back and forth, pays no attention to where they are. In 4, we found those things that block us off from God's will. In 5, we talked about them to another human being. In 6, we become willing to have God remove them. In 7, we ask Him to take them away. We have then completed step 7. Bang, bang. It really doesn't take very long to do 6 and 7 when we're ready to do it. But I think a great mistake that we make in AA is we assume now that we've done 6 and 7 that God is going to strike us as pure as the driven snow and everything will be great from now on. No, these are not the steps God took. These are the steps that we took. No, God doesn't need these steps. He's in pretty good shape already. We don't believe that God will do for us what we can do for ourselves. Now, He'll do what we can't. But we doubt if He'll do what we can do for ourselves. Left on our own resources, we cannot get rid of selfishness, dishonesty, fear, and inconsideration. But God can take those things away, providing we're willing to fill the void that's left. Remember, God will not allow a vacuum or a void in a human mind or anywhere else. He cannot take away my character defects and leave a blank in my head. Those places will have to be refilled with something. And the only thing that can fill them is the opposite. If I want God to take away my selfishness, then I, with God's help, and what little bit of strength I can muster, I'm going to have to start trying to be unselfish and consider other people. If I want Him to take away dishonesty, then I'm going to have to start trying to be honest. If I want Him to take away fear, then I'm going to have to start kicking myself in the rear and say, get up from here and go do those things you need to do. If I want Him to take away consideration, then I need to start considering other people and what they need and what they want. And that's very difficult for me as a selfish, self-centered human being to do. And I can't do it on my own, but I can do it with God's help. My mind is nothing more than a set of mental habits, just like my body is a set of mental habits. The only way you develop a habit is to work at it. And I worked for years to become selfish, dishonest, frightened, and inconsiderate, and that became an habitual part of my mind. Now, to change those habits, I'm going to have to work for years at developing a new habit, gradually replacing selfishness with unselfishness, gradually replacing dishonesty with honesty, gradually replacing fear with courage, gradually replacing inconsideration with consideration, and slowly over a period of time I become a different human being. Slowly the old character dies and a new character is born. I cannot do it without God's help, but God will not do it by Himself. I will have to do my part also. And you know, I find that after those changes are made, that's a pretty good way to live. Now that I'm not quite so selfish, I don't have as much conflict with people as I used to have. Now that I'm a little more honest, I don't have to cover up so many lies. I don't have to spend all my time trying to figure out what I told you yesterday. Now that I'm not quite so frightened, I find that I feel better about myself because I've got courage to do things that I ought to be doing. Those things really do take place. And I begin to feel better about me as I work on 6 and 7. I'm probably going to do this for the rest of my life. Joe?
Yeah, 6 and 7 is the real pinnacle of, is where the change takes place. I think the greatest mistake in the fellowship is talking about we don't really pick up how to use these 2 steps, because this is where the change comes about. You know, most of us, for some reason, have gotten the habit that, you know, it's gotten the idea that all we have to do, as Charlie says, is after we get through step 5, is just turn it over to God and say, God, just give me the $29.95 special. You know, just fix it up. But I think we are very blessed people. We are very blessed. I feel very blessed as an individual to have the opportunity to have these steps in my life. You know, we have the opportunity to live 2 lives in one lifetime as a result of the problems in our life. We have the ability to live better than most people on the face of this earth. Through step 6 and 7, we can change our lives. Now, it took 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to give us these 2 steps. But this is where we change. See, if we had an inventory, we wouldn't see the need to do this. If we hadn't have found that what they was doing to destruction to our lives, we wouldn't have, there would been no motivation to change. But step 6 and 7 are the 2s to change. And they're very difficult 2s, but they work. You know, and there's not a lot in the book about step 6 and 7. I wondered sometimes, why didn't he write more? Why didn't he tell us more? Well, they're simple, and they're hard to use, and you don't need a lot of instructions on them. I look at them like tools. I bought a lot of tools at the hardware store. But I look at step 6 and 7 like a pick and a shovel. You know, I've never bought a pick and a shovel with instructions on them. I mean, you know, you're supposed to know what to do with them things. They don't tell you what to do with them. And as Charlie said, how did we get sick? How did we get the personality we got? We worked at it. We worked at it. So we're going to use these tools to change. Now, how do we use? Step 6 is real simple. Anybody can do it, but it's hard. How do you change? Step 6 is simple. You just don't do what you want to do. Now, if you do what you want to do, you will always be lending actions to those old sick thoughts. And you will feed them, and they will grow in your mind. But if you deny them actions and don't use them, they will dry up. You know, they will fade away from inactions, and new ideas and new thoughts will begin to take their place. So step 6 is don't do what you want to do, and that's hard. And step 7 is make yourself do what you don't want to do, and you will change. You know, the more you make yourself do those new things and you get the results of those things, you'll see the benefit of those, and that'll become a part of your life. And those old ideas will fade away, and a new set of modes will begin to dominate your mind. And we'll have a revolutionary change in our reactions to life as we change. You know, it's just like losing weight. You know, a principle is universal where we apply it. How do we lose weight? Well, they got a lot of things on TV that say that you can eat anything you want to eat and lose weight. Don't you believe that? You might lose some money, but you won't lose much weight. The way you lose weight is a simple principle. The way you lose weight is if you want to change the body, and the body too is what we put in it, is made up of what we put in it. Our minds is made up of what we have put in our minds. So how do we change the body? We don't eat what we want to eat. And we make ourselves eat what we don't like. And you will change accordingly. Okay? And we have that opportunity to change. You know, I feel sorry. Most other people outside of our fellowship, whatever they are, they seem to be hung in that. They got but one life. But we've been given an opportunity to change, to live 2 different lives in one lifetime. And I like to go back to one of the great teachers in the big book, Paul. Paul said, change is simple. Successful living and change. I didn't understand it for many years, but he said, change means daily dying. You know, you got to die somewhere in your life so you can live somewhere new. And only we can slay ourselves. That's what our lives are all about. And we have the opportunity. You know, they say that we in this room with these 2 steps, we could change and change and change, and until where a year from now we wouldn't even know each other. That's possible with these steps. But they said it probably won't happen because most of us are really in love with what we are. And we're not ready to die or give up something so that we can get something better. Everything, you know, if you want to, we talk about a stalk of corn. If you want a stalk of corn, one grain of corn's got to die so that the other stalk. So what we're talking about, we have seen the destruction of these things. And what we want to do is to let go of those things. We want to kill them with inactions. And as we begin to use these new things in our lives, and we see the benefit of these things, then this will become a new part of our personality. And the old ideas will be cast to one side, little at a time. And we can change and change and change. These are the tools to change. Step 6 and 7 are the real strength and where the change takes place, and it's how we apply these on a daily basis.
I think I now begin to understand what they're saying and how it works when it says some of us tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go. I think I understand what they're saying when they say half measures availed us nothing. You know, this is difficult to do. Bill said simple but not easy. A price has to be paid. It means the destruction of self-centeredness. But gradually we can change into different people, and we can change for the rest of our life, and we can become anything we want to become. Now, if you buy into this, be careful. Because if you buy into this, you're going to have to assume the most awesome responsibility you've ever had to assume in your life. You'll have to assume responsibility for the way you are, and the way you feel, and the way you act. See, always before I could blame it on her, him, them, or God. But now that I know I can change, and now that I've got the tools, that I have to accept the responsibility for what I am, and the way I feel, and for how I act. So it is quite a responsibility, but the end result is worth doing almost anything for. At first we do this because we have to do it. We just can't live without it. But as we begin to see the benefits of changing, then we begin to do it because we want to do it. And as our life becomes better and better, it becomes an exciting thing. Now then the idea is, how much can I change? How much more can I receive through this thing? Through the use of these 2 steps. It is the most fascinating adventure that I've ever set out on. I didn't want to do it, but now that I'm into it, I certainly love the way it works. Let's look at 8 and 9 real fast, and then break, or you want to break? What do you want to do?
Let's take a break. I'll just start.
Okay.
Okay. Getting started back. That's a long 10 minutes. Got circles on. That's okay.
I got 'em.
Good, okay. As we get started back, page 76, having completed steps 6 and 7, we now come to steps 8 and 9. And we look at the procedure of the steps. And looking at the human life, our book talks about a design of living that really works. And there is a design to life. There's a design to everything on the face of this earth. We know the human being God is inside, whether we think so or not. We all have a spiritual life. It's just a matter of whether we want to live with it in harmony or live with it in conflict. And in 1, 2, and 3, we made a decision to let God be the director of our lives. So the results of 1, 2, we came to step 3, in which we made that decision. And for the first time, we had our spiritual lives together. And then we just completed steps 4, 5, 6, and 7, which we worked on the mind, the second phase of human life. And now we come to the third area of life, our relationship with other people. These are the 3 basic parts of life. Our relationship with God, with ourselves, and with other people. And so this brings us to steps 8 and 9. Many great philosophies have spoke of this. In the Bible it talks about it. All great religions will say the same thing. All great philosophies about the design of the human life. The Bible said, "Love of the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul," and that's 1, 2, and 3. And it says, "with all thy mind," that's 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then it says, "and thy neighbor as thyself." So that's what life is about. Everything in life fits under these 3 categories: our mind. And now that we have gotten that straight, now we got to go out to work on the final area, dimension of life, our relationship with other people. And when we say to our physical lives, we're not just talking about our physical bodies, but our physical bodies in their relationship with everything else that's physical on the face of this earth. That's our jobs, our homes, our families. Everything in life is based on that area. A lot of great people that work with alcoholics say that all you got to do for an alcoholic is go out and get his job straight and his family straight and everything else straight, and he'll be all right. But that's not building your house on a firm foundation. Really, what we do is start inside. AA said alcoholism is an inside job. So we work on our spiritual lives, then we work on our minds, and then we work on our relationship with other people. I did that when I was drunk. I constantly worked in the third dimension. I'd have my wife, and I'd have a problem with my wife, but I'd have my car and I'd have my house. And when I get my wife back and get her straightened out, the car would be gone. Then I get the car back, and the house would be gone. And then, I constantly worked. But now, if we're building it now, we can straighten it up. Now we can go into those areas and build something firm.
Go ahead.
So this is what 8 and 9 is all about. We begin, now we need more action, which we find if faith without works is dead. Let's look at steps 8 and 9. We have a list of persons we have harmed and whom we are willing to make amends. We made it when we took inventory. We already have that list. It's already prepared. We made it, and when we did resentments, we made it on the fears, and we made it in our harms to others. We subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. We attempt to sweep away the debris which has accumulated out of an effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. And we have seen how we've been living that way. If we were having the will to do this, we ask until it comes. Remember, it was agreed at the beginning that we go to any length for victory over alcohol. Basically, this paragraph is step 8. We have the list, and then in the second part of step 8 is simply becoming willing to do it. And that is step 8. And there's prayer here. If we haven't the will, we ask until it comes. So there's prayer in step 8 too. We pray for the willingness and the strength to do this. And if we have completed that, then we have completed step 8. Now all the rest of the book is going to deal with step 9. This section of the book.
Step 8 is really very simple. If we have taken the inventory the way the book says in step 4, and if we've been able to see where we ourselves set most of the trouble in motion, where we usually did things to other people, and then they retaliated against us, those that we hated, now then we don't hate them so bad, because we see in most cases it was our fault in the beginning. So by doing step 4 the way the book says, we become willing to make amends to people, clear back there in step 4 in the 5 area. Also, we see that even though we haven't done anything to another person, if they in turn hurt us, we see that if we wasn't so selfish and inconsiderate and wasn't using that stuff, maybe we could turn it loose also. And we begin to develop this forgiving attitude all the way back in step 4 and 5. So step 8 really isn't that difficult. If there's a few there that we're not willing to make amends to, the book recognizes self cannot overcome self. And it says we ask until it comes. And I know in my own particular case there was a few of them on there that I really hated. And I really couldn't see that I had any involvement in that. And I really didn't want to turn loose of some of those. So my favorite thing was, I can't do step 8 because I'm not willing to make amends to all of them. And I tried that on my sponsor, and he didn't let me get by with it. He said, let me tell you what to do. He said, make yourself a list on a sheet of paper. He said, divide it into 4 columns. And he said, list first in the first column those that you want to make amends to right now. Your mother, your children, people you love. And he said, in the second column, make a list of those that you know sooner or later you'll make amends to, but you're going to put it off for a while. He said, put them in the second column and list it as later. And he said, then make a third column and list there some maybes. He said, those that you're not sure about, you may or may not make amends to. And then he said, in a fourth column, list those that you're never going to make amends to and head it up never. And he said, then when you make amends, do those right nows right now. And he said, by the time you're through with that, you'll be ready to do some laters. And he said, by the time you're through with laters, you'll be ready to do maybes. And he said, I'll bet your money by the time you're through the maybes, you'll be ready to do those nevers also. And he was right. I tried to let 1 or 2 names block me off from this whole thing, and he wouldn't let me do that. We can become willing to make amends, I think, in 3 ways. 1, by taking step 4, the way the book says. 2, by asking God to help you be willing to be willing. 3, by starting to make amends on those that you want to. And sooner or later we become willing to make amends to them all. Step 9 says, We made direct amends wherever possible. And we believe there's two kinds of direct amends. First, face-to-face, one-on-one, eyeball to eyeball. That's about as direct as you can possibly get. See, the reason for this 8 and 9 series is not really to make people like us, but to do our utmost to get rid of shame, fear, guilt, and remorse associated with the past. And if I sit down with a person eyeball to eyeball, one-on-one, to make my amends, then I will always know in my mind I have done my utmost. And whether they accept it or not becomes their problem. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But I know that I've done all I can do if I do it eyeball to eyeball. If I write you a letter, I'm not really sure how it's been received. If I make a phone call, I'm never sure whether I've done my utmost. But if I go eyeball to eyeball, then I know. There's an example of that on page 77. It is in the middle, it starts in the middle of the second paragraph.
In the middle, yeah.
The question of how to approach the man we hated will arise. It may be he has done us more harm than we've done him, and though we may have acquired a better attitude toward him, we're still not too keen about admitting our faults. Nevertheless, with a person we dislike, we take the bit in our teeth. It is harder to go to an enemy than to a friend, but we find it much more beneficial to us. We go to him in a helpful and forgiving spirit, confessing our former ill feeling and expressing our regret. Under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. Simply we tell him that we will never get over drinking till we've done our utmost to straighten out the past. We are there to sweep off our side of the street, realizing that nothing worthwhile can be accomplished until we do so, never trying to tell him what he should do. His faults are not discussed. We stick to our own. If our manner is calm, frank, and open, we will be gratified with the results. In 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected happens. Sometimes the man we're calling upon admits his own faults, so feuds of years standing melt away in an hour. Rarely do we fail to make satisfactory progress. Our former enemies sometimes praise what we're doing and wish us well. Occasionally they will offer assistance. It should not matter, however, if someone does throw us out of his office. We've made our demonstration, done our part, it's water over the dam. You know, I had one or two that said to me, Charlie, we didn't much like you when you were drinking, and we're not very crazy about you now. And we'd just soon you'd leave us alone. But that's okay, because I did my utmost to straighten out that damage from the past. I went to them, I talked to them, I told them what had taken place, I asked their forgiveness, and I did it eyeball to eyeball. Now, if they don't accept that, then they're sick too. And I can't change sick people. And I'm not going to let sick people make me sick anymore. So if they don't accept it, then that becomes their problem. I've done my utmost. Direct amend eyeball to eyeball. We think another meaning of direct amends is to make direct restitution. To pay those people back for what we've stolen from them in the past. It doesn't do me much good to go to you and say, look, when I was drinking, I stole $1,000 for you and I'm sorry. Would you forgive me? You're probably going to say, I'm sorry too. Where's my $1,000? I'm trying to get rid of guilt and remorse and fear associated with the past. And the only way for me to really do that is pay you back your $1,000. And then I don't have to be worried about running into you next month or next year. I don't have to be guilty because I've stolen your money, because I've now given it back to you. I have freed myself from the past completely when I've made equal restitution. Another example, page 78, second paragraph. Most alcoholics owe money. I can't imagine that, but it seems as though we do. We do not dodge our creditors, telling them that what we're trying to do, we make no bones about our drinking. They usually know it anyway, whether we think so or not. Nor are we afraid of disclosing our alcoholism on a theory it may cause financial harm. Approached in this way, the most ruthless creditor will sometimes surprise us. Arranging the best deal we can, we let these people know we are sorry. Our drinking has made us slow to pay. We must lose our fear of creditors no matter how far we have to go, for we're liable to drink if we're afraid to face them. Now, it isn't fun to go in there and do that. But I can go in and talk with them and say, I can't pay you your money now. What I'd really like to do as an alcoholic is wait till I get it all in a lump sum and put it in a sack and go in there and slam it down on his desk and say, here's your money. But I can't do that in most cases. I may have to arrange to pay them $5 a week, $10 a month, whatever it takes. But the freedom comes in a willingness to do so. And the freedom comes in the beginning of the making of the amend. And it really is beside the point how long it takes me to make it. You know, some people say, well, the money involved is so great I could never pay it back. I don't know why. We could steal it. And if we can steal it, surely we can pay it back if we are willing to do so. You know, I have a friend that used to live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and one day when he was 29 years sober, he said, Charlie, I paid the last of them last week. And I said, Dan, how do you feel? And Dan said, I feel about 8 foot tall. Now, Dan was 5'2". Dan said, this is the first time in my life I can ever remember not owing somebody for something I've stolen from them in the past. He said, I feel good about myself today. It just took him 29 years to do it. But we can do those things if we are willing to do so. And the freedom comes in the willingness and in the making of the effort and the starting of the job. It can be done. You know, many of we alcoholics have a lot of trouble with money. Many of us never learn how to handle money. Many of us never learned how to make budgets and how to control our spending urges, and we got in all kinds of trouble money-wise. You know, there is another fellowship called Debtors Anonymous that some alcoholics find they need to go there to find out how to handle money. And if we can once learn how to handle it, then we can begin to pay back those debts from the past. But until we learn how to take care of it, we're probably never going to be able to do very much about it. But this is a way to clear up the wreckage of the past and feel free and feel good about ourselves. We may direct amends wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. The only consideration in not making a direct amend is if it's going to injure them or others, then we probably can't do that. There's page after page after page on when not to make these amends. Joe?
As Charlie said, this is a very specific part of the book. And he and I talk a lot, and we have an opportunity to work with a lot of people. And we have never seen, he and I agree, we have never seen a person who had a problem with an amend that we couldn't find something in the book to help them. You know, all these pages here throughout are on step 9. And they have specific paragraphs to do with almost any problem that can come up with making amends. If we would use the book and see how specific the book is, it would help anybody who, with any type of problem comes up with making amends. That part is already dealt with direct amends. I love the story I heard not so long ago of this guy who came to his sponsor, and he told his sponsor, he said, can I make amends by mail? And his sponsor said, yeah, if you harmed them by mail. Okay. Now, on the bottom of that page, 78, it talks about just going through these things. Past criminal, it talks about in that paragraph past criminal offenses that we might have. Over on page 79, and then at the bottom of that paragraph, it begins to talk about other people's involvement. How do we handle that? And throughout the next page, on page 80. On the top of page, at the bottom of the page 80 and the top of page 81, it talks about sex outside of marriage. And the bottom of that, then down the bottom, it says, should we tell all? How much of this should we tell? So all the information is in here to handle any amends that we might need to have. It will tell us when we should make it, when we should not make it. It's very specific. And I think if we would study this section of the book, if you have a problem with amends, you will find a paragraph in there on that particular subject and to help you with any amends that you might need to make. And he does tell us, as Charlie says, it tells us to make a direct amends, and it says wherever possible. and then he tells us where to make it, and then he tells us when not to make it. I hear a lot of people who read the steps that read that step wrong. I guess it sounds, we read things into the steps. Sometimes we find it even printed wrong if somebody writes it out. Instead of saying, the step says wherever possible. And I hear a lot of people read it and say whenever possible. Now, it wouldn't be much of a step if you told an alcoholic he could do it whenever he wanted to. But it does say wherever. And then it tells us when not to do it, though. When we should not do it. If it's going to harm another person, we should not do it. But the key thing is, Bill always emphasized, and he emphasized it to me as I see, the key thing in this whole process is not making the amends. The key thing is in step 8. The freedom is the willingness. When we become willing to do it, we're free. Then wherever possible we can do it. And when sometime we can't do it. But if we're willing to do it, we're free. And that's what the step is all about. That's what restitution is all about. It's all about freedom that comes when we become willing to do it. And again, as Charlie said, that comes back all the way back to step 4. It's through that. That willingness begins there when we see our involvement in it. And in step 5, it helps us to become willing. In step 6 and 7. And then, this is the willingness, the freedom comes in step 8. Not in when we make the amend, but when we become willing to make it.
See, most of those people I resented way back in step 4, I didn't really know I owed them an amend. I thought they had hurt me. But when I began to look at the truth of those resentments, I found out that I did something to them that set the ball in motion, and then they retaliated against me. And then I, through resentments, transferred all blame to them. So there's no way I can do 8 and 9 without a good step 4. I think the key to this whole area lies in a good step 4, taken as the book says to take it, because it gives me all those things I need for 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And the real key is in the willingness to make amends. Because if we're willing, we will make them,
right.
And we will make them wherever we possibly can. On page 83, third paragraph, there may be some wrongs we can never fully right. We don't worry about them if we can honestly say to ourselves that we would right them if we could. Some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter. And there may be a valid reason for postponing in some cases, but we don't delay if it can be avoided. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble without being servile or scraping. As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. Some of those people we cannot make a direct amend to. Maybe they're already dead and buried. Maybe in making an amend we would hurt them further, or just as importantly, hurt other people. Or maybe there's things like companies we stole money from, and it's very difficult to make amends to them, because usually if you've stolen from a department store, they don't want that money back. That's already been written off long ago. And if you try to pay them money back today, all it would do would be upset the books. So you can't make a direct amend to them. But what you could do is take $100 and give it to some good, worthwhile institution, such as the Salvation Army, that Joe loves so much. And the idea is not really what other people think, but to free ourselves of that stuff. And I could take the $100 and give it to a worthwhile cause, and probably that would free me from that guilt. I don't need to go crawl before anyone. I think a mistake that we make sometimes is in our zeal to have everybody like us. We go to them and they don't accept our amend, and we go back and we go back and we literally beg them to forgive us. We don't have to do that. If they don't want to forgive us, then they're sick also. As God's people, we don't have to crawl before anyone. I think one of the greatest amends we owe is to ourselves. Now, I do not hold with the idea that I didn't hurt anybody but me, because I hurt a lot of people. But I hurt me about as bad as I hurt anybody. And I think the only amend that I can make to me is to make my amends to other people. And through the making of those amends, I get rid of the guilt, the remorse, the fear associated with those things. And then I can feel good. I can't change anything I did in the past, but I can make me feel better about it by trying to straighten up the past. And if I do this to the utmost of my ability, to the best of my ability, then I ought to be free of that stuff. Now, if you're right with God, and you're right with your own mind and yourself, and you're right with your fellow man, probably the first time in our lives we are right in all three dimensions of life. Probably we are well human beings because we fit back into the design that God intended for us the day we were born. No, He intended for us to be well in the spirit, well in the mind, and well in our relations with other people. And we really screwed that whole mess up. But through these first 9 steps, we are now well in those 3 areas. And you're going to feel real good when you get well in all 3 dimensions. Here's how you're going to feel after we've worked on step 9 for a while, Joe.
Now we have the promises. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we are halfway through. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we see that our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, and this is a spiritual experience, sometimes slowly, the spiritual awakening. They will always materialize if we work for them. One stipulation. That's real positive. They will always materialize as results of these steps. Promises come after work. No one, I always remember but being promised things as a child. And Charlie and I talk about, and I know in my life, when I grew up as a kid, one of the main things in my life each week was going to the picture show. I don't know if anybody here is that age. But you just didn't have no life if you didn't go to the movie on Saturday. I mean, there wasn't no need to go into Sunday school because you didn't have nothing to talk about unless you went to the picture show. And, every Saturday morning I would get up first thing, and my mother would promise me. She said, "Joe, I'm going to let you go to the picture show today." And she had more than 12 steps for me to take, though. She said, "After you do this, and after you rake the yard, and I don't know if anybody here remember, after you empty the water under the icebox." I don't know if anybody here is that old. But I had to do all these things, and sure enough, she would promise me. And that's what these promises are. And Saturday evening, after all those steps, she'd give me a quarter. And I could go around to the movie, and I had 15 cents to get in. And I bought me a great big old bag of popcorn for a nickel, and a great big old candy bar. And man, I was in heaven. And this had all come after some work. Promises always come after work. I think so many times we always get into the promises, but we don't realize where the promises are in the book. The promises come after the first 9 steps. They are the results of those steps.
See, we promised in the beginning that if we would do as Columbus did, if we would believe, and if we would decide, and if we would act, then we could get results. Well, the promises are the results of the procedure that we followed through the first 9 steps. I'd like to read them real fast one more time for 2 reasons. Number 1, I love the way I read them. But the real reason is I want to add some of my own words to them. And I want you to think about it as I read them. And the words I'm going to add are whenever I took a drink of alcohol. This was back in the days when I was young. Alcohol was my friend. I could drink it and do anything I wanted to do, become the world's greatest lover, Fred Astaire on the dance floor, and it really did for me what I couldn't do for myself. These are the days before alcohol turned against me and almost destroyed me. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I knew a new freedom and a new happiness. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I did not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I would comprehend the word serenity and I would know peace. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, no matter how far down the scale I had gone, I could see how my experience would benefit others. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, that feeling of uselessness and self-pity would disappear. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I would lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in my fellows. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, self-seeking would slip away. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, my whole attitude and outlook upon life would change. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, fear of people and of economic insecurity would leave me. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I would intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle me. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I would suddenly realize that alcohol was doing for me what I could not do for myself. You know, this is the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous. All my life I've looked for that sense of ease and comfort, and all human beings do that. And I found that sense of ease and comfort for many years in this thing called alcohol. It did those things for me that I could not do for myself, and I loved what it did for me. But one day alcohol turned against me, and it began to destroy me. And not knowing I was an alcoholic, I spent the next 7, 8, 9, 10 years desperately trying to find a way to recapture these things that alcohol did for me in the beginning, not knowing I'd never be able to do that. And alcohol damn near killed me. And I came to AA, and you gave me 9 steps. And I used those 9 steps in my life, and I got all the good things from those 9 steps that I used to get from drinking alcohol. And the beautiful part of it is I didn't get any of the bad things from them. The first 9 steps have never put me in jail yet. I've never been drugged into a divorce court over the first 9 steps. I have never vomited. Damn near did a time or two, but I've never really vomited over the first 9 steps. See, the miracle is they have given me all the good and none of the bad. No wonder I love the first 9 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And surely, as we read those promises, we can see that they all apply to the mind. They don't deal with the body at all. Surely, if this is my new attitude toward life, then surely I've undergone one great personality change. We really have recovered from our disease at this stage of the game. We no longer are restless, irritable, and discontented. We no longer are filled with shame, fear, guilt, and remorse. We've eliminated that stuff from the past. And we feel good. And therefore we don't have to drink in order to feel better. Now, if we aren't careful, this is the point that we would stop. Because this is so good. For most of us, we've never experienced anything like it. And we would say to ourselves, this can't possibly get any better. And we may stop here, and if we do, we're in trouble. Because there is another spiritual law that's always applied, and that is that in our universe, nothing ever stays the same. Everything is either growing or it's dying. It's progressing or regressing. We look at a beautiful tree out here, and it grows, and it grows, and it grows, and every day it gets more beautiful, until one day it stops growing. And the day it stops growing, it begins to die, and eventually returns back to where it came from. The human body is one of the greatest miracles that God ever conceived anywhere. And it grows.